Good evening. It's December 20th of 2016, and we're here for our last Select Board meeting of 2016. Our meeting convened at 5:45, and we went into executive session to discuss contract and litigation matters where a premature general public knowledge would clearly place town, select board, or people or entities involved at substantial disadvantage. We didn't make any decisions in executive session. I want to welcome everybody who's in attendance tonight and welcome everybody who's watching us on TV, whether live or recorded. I want to welcome our BCTV operators, our member of the press, and welcome back, Olga, and our ASL interpreters. The first order of business tonight on our public meeting agenda is to approve our minutes from December 6th and December 13th.
So moved.
We have motion to approve the minutes from December 6th and December 13th. Anybody have any comments or edits or suggestions, anything about those minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from December 6th and December 13th as presented, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. So the next matter on the agenda is chair's remarks. It being a holiday season and the last meeting of 2016, we want to say happy holidays to everybody. Hope everybody and their families has safe and healthy holidays. Really the big news that we've heard since our last select board meeting last Tuesday was the announcement of the decision by Commonwealth Dairy, which operates at the southern end of the town of Brattleboro, to expand its facilities, to make a $20 million investment in those facilities, to establish its company headquarters here in Brattleboro, and to, as a result of the expansion, create, we hope, 50 jobs in addition to what's already there at Commonwealth. It really was very excellent news, and it's a matter that the town has been working on along with the state for quite some time, although it wasn't something that we were able to say in public until the announcement occurred. People will recall that we discussed, I think about a month ago, the financing for the sewage line at Exit 1, and that project actually was related to this expansion of the manufacturing capacity there at Commonwealth. And I particularly want to thank, on behalf of the town, Town Manager Peter Elwell, Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland, and our Public Works Director Steve Barrett. When this opportunity was presented to us by the state of Vermont and the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, they jumped right on the opportunity. We're able to work with the state to deal with our infrastructure issues and very quickly to respond in a positive way to the efforts that were being made by the state to help Commonwealth expand here. It's really a testament to the solid structure we have in place here, where we're working to ensure economic opportunities and to keep good jobs here in Brattleboro. So I really want to thank those members of the staff. I know that there's work going to be happening going forward to continue with this process. There's going to be work that has to be negotiated with the tax stabilization and the like, and work completing our applications relating to the grant funding. But all in all, it's really some very, very good news, and we want to recognize that as the year comes to an end. The next matter on tonight's agenda is Select Board comments, committee reports. Anybody?
How about the...
We'll get to town manager after.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, both of my meetings are coming up for tonight, so I got nothing.
Anybody?
Yeah.
And then town manager's comments?
I'm fine.
All set?
No, well, I wanted to,
All right, Dick, go ahead.
thank you. Mr. Chairman. I wanted to take this opportunity at the end of the year to thank some people. My other hat in the community is flowers and lights and different things I do around town. And the department heads in our town, Steve Barrett, Carol Lalott, Chief Fitzgerald, Mike Bukasi. You know, I pick up the phone and I make a call if I need some assistance. They're always there to help out. And no matter what I do, I am very appreciative of their support. Whatever I need, they say, we'll figure it out to help you. So it doesn't happen without them. And I wanted to let them know that I really appreciate all of them. Part of the other group, I was affiliated with Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. We have a company that's located actually on Elliott Street, and it's Recycle Away. And they are a huge distributor for recycling and trash containers throughout the country and out into Canada. And actually they donated some trash and recycle cans to Downtown Alliance, and we actually, the Public Works, they were delivered there, and Public Works got them out for us. And one set is in Plenty Park, and they're pretty flashy. And the other set is down in front of the Transportation Center. So I'd like to thank them for that donation. And last but not least, a couple of people, Ahmed Rashid, who has been very significant in the flower program, Daryl Pillsbury, who is significant. I won't say why, he knows why. And last but not least, James Van Slaben, who we passed away way too early. We did have a nice celebration of his life a couple of weeks ago, and I want to thank all the people that came out for that. But I can certainly tell you that we all miss him, and he was a significant part of whatever I was doing downtown. So happy holidays to all, and thank you very much for all of the people who have assisted me throughout the year.
Any other comments from Select Board? You didn't have anything?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Anybody want to speak on the public participation? This is a good opportunity for anybody who's in attendance who wants to speak to something that's not on the agenda. Seeing nobody for public participation, the next matter on tonight's agenda is under unfinished business, the police fire facilities project.
Thank you. So I'll give an update about the aspects that don't require action, if that's all right, and then we'll come back to the two aspects that do, because we'll have, I expect, particularly on one of those, we'll spend quite a bit more time and go into more detail. So the update on the West Brattleboro Fire Station construction is that everything continues along well there. We expect that in the next couple of weeks we will complete the exterior siding and trim installation, the electrical room and installation of the electrical service, the completion of the interior drywall installation, and work on, probably not all of the work, but some of the work related to the plywood and strapping installation in the apparatus bay. So there'll be a lot of activity still continuing on through the holiday weeks, and January will be the finish work on the project, as we expect that sometime in February the construction will be finished and the fire department will be ready to move in. The central fire station, you don't see much difference there just yet. There is foundation work going on, and there's some site work going on around that. That's going to continue still for the next few weeks. By the time we get to mid-January, we'll start to have updates that will reflect more significant progress, and if you walk by the site, you'll be able to see more significant progress on the building of the addition, which is going to be immediately behind the existing fire station. For the police station, the real estate closing occurred on December 2nd, as we discussed last time. And the major item for tonight is the proposed guaranteed maximum price for the police station. I'll come back and I'll address that in a few moments as an action item with you. There's also going to be an action item related to the architectural fees for the project because of 3 small additions to that scope of work. The town manager's authorization of owner's expenses. There were several this time, 5 in total since the last time that we met. 4 of those, however, were less than $1,000 each. They were for relatively minor items and are listed on the log that's attached to this report in the notebooks for the select board meeting. The other item, the one that was more significant, was a $9,000 authorization for testing services. That was not in response to any kind of soils issue or any other issue, but just for the basic testing services that are required. It is the same company that has advised on the soils issues that have arisen during the project, but this is just for things like testing the concrete when it's poured and that sort of thing. A total of $9,000 authorized for the central fire station component of the testing services. And on the overall project schedule and budget, we're in really good shape on both. So the written report advises that we began the construction of the West Brattleboro Fire Station about 2 weeks later than was originally expected, and we expect to finish up about 2 weeks later than was originally expected. So with the adjustment to that schedule at the beginning of the construction phase, we've continued just right about on from week to week and continue to believe that it'll be finished on schedule. The construction time for the central fire station was extended, you'll recall. I believe it was an 11-month initial projection. In any event, it's now a 13-month construction period for that project. So that has been amended in the schedule that's before you today, which is the first time you've seen an updated written schedule since July. That lengthening of that and the adjustment of the start and end time for the central fire station are reflected in that schedule. And the construction for the 62 Black Mountain Road project, we believe, is going to be about the same length based on now having the guaranteed maximum price submitted. We do expect it's going to be about the same 8-month length, that 7-month length that was originally projected, but we're beginning in early January rather than in mid-December. So that 3-week delay that's reflected on the front end will also be reflected on the back end. And again, that's in the schedule that's provided as part of this backup. On budget, there have been a variety of different ways in which we have spent some money that wasn't originally planned, and a variety of different ways in which we've saved some money, both on the larger construction items and on other aspects of this. That's all reflected in the updated budget that is provided also as part of this backup. I think the important thing to note is that this far along, where we have all 3 of the guaranteed maximum price figures, which are the 3 very large figures approaching $10 million, the 3 of them together, out of the overall $13+ million for the project. With all those numbers in hand being known, and with the adjustments for the things, the overages and the underages that are already known at this stage of the project, we're within $2,600 of being right on the mark of where we would expect to be at this point. So that leaves a contingency balance of $835,000. That's not money that we should be planning to spend in any particular way at this point, except for the most high priority items like the generators and some communications equipment that we've already discussed. We'll be back to address those with you at a future meeting. But other than for those more essential items that are at the very top of the contingency list, this is a really positive place for us to be at this stage of the project, but we should be cautious and keep that remaining contingency balance as a savings account until we get much further along with the construction. We've just started at Central, haven't yet started at the police station, and we want to make sure that we get far enough along in both of those construction projects to feel confident that we know where we're going to land at the end of the job with the contingency. But for this report, as we're 6 months in to an 18-month process, we feel good about both schedule and budget.
Anybody on the board have any questions about the budgeting and the timing?
I noticed with the West Brattleboro Station, the modified vapor barrier has been installed, and there was an issue raised earlier which was addressed about the vapor barrier issue. I wonder if Steve would give us a little revisit to what the questions were and if this is part of dealing with that, or maybe whatever you want to say?
Good evening. We addressed the vapor barrier concerns at West Brattleboro by continuing our research. We had started out the project with an intention of choosing a high-quality vapor barrier there to eliminate what we call dew point in the walls. You know, there's an outside temperature and an inside temperature, and where the two meet, it rains, just like weather, clouds. And so in building science, it's important to have a full understanding of the wall section and where that dew point is. So as time has gone on, we've continued to do that research and determined that later technology has allowed us to choose a few products for a vapor barrier. We chose what's called a DB+, which is actually a chemically made product made up of cellulose, which is wood, and oil-based products. They combine the two to make a molecular structure of woven fabric that allows moisture to pass through it both ways. A little bit like Gore-Tex, but Gore-Tex is only supposed to allow water to pass through one way. But the way the design of the weave is, depending on moisture content, pressures, both internal and external. For instance, when you have a storm coming through, you have low barometric pressure or high all of that's contemplated, believe it or not, in these sciences. Long story short, the DB Plus is what we installed. We had a fantastic installer apply it for us. It goes in, if you can imagine, you have drywall on the inside face of a wall, and then of course we have the wood studs, and in between the wood studs we filled those cavities with cellulose blown in insulation, dense pack it's called. And but between the drywall and the face of the stud is where we put this vapor barrier, so that it can act as a sort of a monitoring, gatekeeping, moisture control product for us in the long term. So it's been.
So it lets the studs breathe.
It does, yeah, which eliminates the concern about rots and.
Our studs have Gore-Tex coating.
They
Well,
do.
it's actually
Gore-Tex.
a lot of tape.
And a lot of tape.
There's a lot of tape involved in this.
But it looks good. It's the right color and everything. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We were able to, Steve, we were able to install that product within the budget that had already been agreed to.
Yes, we did. Yep.
Any other questions from anybody on the board? Dick,
Yeah, Steve, I have a question
Stay
for
on.
you.
please.
Actually, speaking to someone about the electrical contract for Central Station,
Yep.
and them having some issues with the bid, and then something I think that they might have missed. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I mean, I would like to, but I don't know what the issue is. Would you have any more information on that?
No, someone came up to me and was talking to me about something that was missed, and said that they were scrambling around trying to make up for something that they had missed because it was a fixed price deal. And my question was, do you have any knowledge of it? And really, is it going to have any effect on our project?
No, that's the most important question, and it is not. If that relationship happens to be between DEW and the subcontractor of question, and that because they've provided us with this GMP, it is incumbent upon them to provide whatever is in the documents, and so there's no doubt in my mind that it won't be an issue for us. I hope it's not an issue for the subcontractor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from anybody on the board about the price of the schedule?
I did have one other question, and this is really off the wall here. The additional costs for the paving and surfacing,
We'll talk about that after.
after what?
Well, because we're going to do the GMP for the police station next.
Okay. Oh, duh. Yeah, thank you.
I think.
Or it's oops, I guess.
No, Don's good.
That's okay.
No,
I
Don.
just want to make sure we're covering what we're covering when we're covering. Any other questions about the general budget and the scheduling for the project?
from anybody on the board or anybody's attendance. All right, then I think the next item to be discussed is the GMP for the police station, including the drainage and the parking lot.
Right.
Peter?
Thank you. I'm going to ask for the board's indulgence on this one. Normally, we present summaries more in a more conversational manner. Based on the importance and the level of detail in this one, I'm actually going to read about half of page 2 of the memorandum you've already read to make sure that the public is well aware of the component pieces of this decision. DEW submitted the construction manager, contractor for the project, submitted a guaranteed maximum price to the town of $2,773,336 for construction at 62 Black Mountain Road. That is $149,896 higher than, $149,896 higher than last year's estimate. The difference, however, is entirely accounted for in 3 components. First, the fit-up costs for the tenant space were not part of the cost estimate prior to the decision being made to go forward with the project. Those costs are on the order of $60,000 and will be split 50-50 based on the prior decision made by the board together with New England newspapers in the formation of that lease. So there is additional cost that's being borne by the project for that, but we will recover half of that additional cost in the first 4 years of the lease. The second aspect of this is the cost of completely replacing the existing parking lot. So initially it wasn't even intended to be repaved. Then there was some discussion of possibly doing a resurfacing. In the further investigation of the site, it became clear that so much of the lot would need to be replaced and so significant drainage improvements would need to be made in order to comply with the state's clean water requirements that a full replacement of the parking lot, including a redesign and new lighting, vehicle charging stations, all would be appropriate. We presented that to you previously and you agreed that in the design phase of this that should be included in this project. It is included in this project. And it is the other significant part of this additional cost above and beyond the estimate of a year ago. And the last piece is the related drainage improvements. So there's some things that are part of that drainage improvement that goes off of the parking lot area and addresses other parts of the site. And in the fullness of complying with the state's water quality requirements, there's additional cost there. You've been provided a full copy of the details. The public also can review, if they'd like, a full copy of the detailed document that has line by line every aspect of this guaranteed maximum price. If you remove those 3 elements that I just described, the number is just about right on the estimate of a year ago. Importantly, above and beyond that, it's comforting, I think, that there's good, solid explanation and that it does involve increased scope for why this proposed number before you this evening would be about $150,000 higher than the estimate of a year ago. But more important than that, I think, is looking at the project in its totality. So now that we have the GMP for all 3 of the project components, we can look at the collective pricing of the 2 fire stations and the police station component and see a total construction cost estimate from a year ago of $9,159,548 and an actual GMP for the 3 sites together of $9,187,306. So all 3 pieces together, we've got the same construction manager who's managing all 3 of these. There's aspects of this that were done intentionally with 1 construction manager and 3 components, all as part of 1 large project in order to achieve some economies of scale. Those things are coming true, and because we saved money a little bit at West Brattleboro and over $100,000 compared to the estimate at the Central Fire Station, when you add in the impact of this proposed guaranteed maximum price that's before you this evening, the whole construction portion of the project, over $9 million, we come in within $28,000, $27,758 higher than the estimate of a year ago. That's a 0.3% increase over the estimate of a year ago. So recognizing the specific reasons why the police station guaranteed maximum price is higher than the estimate, and also the very solid status of the overall project budget, the Police Fire Facilities Building Committee at its meeting on December 14th passed the following motion: to recommend the Select Board approval of the guaranteed maximum price of $2,773,336 for the police station as set forth in the proposal dated December 8th, 2016 from DEW, which was reviewed at the PFFBC meeting on December 14, 2016. This evening, town staff and Steve Horton are happy to recommend, along with the advisory committee, that the Select Board approve this police station guaranteed maximum price as proposed. If you do, construction will begin on January 3rd. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the GMP or any other aspect of the project.
Is there anybody on the board who's got any questions about the guaranteed maximum price contract or any of its components?
Yes.
Dave?
I just want to see if anybody else did. Yeah. The existing parking lot and the grading, in the past, we've occasionally had projects that came along that public service was able to do parts of or in their entirety and save a significant savings, see significant savings. Is there any of this that might be done by public service?
Public Works? Yeah, I would recommend against that for a couple of different reasons. One is that Steve can speak to the details of this better than I can, but just the component piece of this being part of the overall site work at the project, I believe will yield an economy that isn't true when we're doing an isolated piece of work.
Right.
And secondly, just the intensity and scope of the work that's going to be going on there. I think we want to leave this site under the sole control of the contractor and not be mixing in our own forces as part of the labor.
Yep, that's great.
Any other questions or comments from anybody on the board about the guaranteed maximum price or any contract or any of its components? John, you want to talk with us a little bit about how the Police Fire Facilities Building Committee has been functioning and the oversight and contributions they've been making, if you could?
Actually, it's been going really well.
Thank you.
We had quite a spirited meeting the other day, and it was about just about everything we were talking about tonight. There was some concern that I had raised a question about having some money left over for the total project, and so I wanted to make sure that we didn't delve into it too much, because we're only a third of the way through the project. So I didn't want people to think, because it's just like if somebody asked me to build a garage, how much does a 2-car garage cost? And you just throw out a quick number. That's the number that people kind of tend to remember. So I really didn't want to say that we were going to have this big savings, at the end of the project until we got a little bit further into it. So that was some of the discussions that was going on that night. But overall, I'll tell you, the committee works well together. It's great working with Steve and Ray and who's Mike? No, it's Mike. Yeah. Yeah. And I think everything has been thoughtful, and the process has been great. So. But we're going to have some glitches here and there. It's, like the parking lot is just one thing, and that was discussed early on in, wasn't it, Steve? I mean, we talked about that early on in the committee meetings, and we thought, well, it's probably going to be okay. And the more you get into it, you see, you talk about a $2.5 million project, so things are about to pop up. But it's been great. The committee works well together.
Well, when we decided to move forward with this project as a whole about 4 years ago, we clearly wanted to have citizen oversight involved. And even after we wound up putting the project on hold, we want to thank all the members of the Police Fire Facilities Building Committee for their persistence and their hard work and their dedication in helping to oversee this project and making contributions to trying to ensure that this thing goes smoothly, and all the expertise that they bring to the project as well. Anybody else on the board got anything about the guaranteed maximum price contract or any component parts? Anybody who's in attendance have any questions about any of this? I think we're ready for a motion, would be my guess.
Let's build a police station.
I move we approve the guaranteed maximum price of $2,773,336 for the police station construction as presented in the detailed GMP document dated December 8th, 2016 from DEW Construction Corp.
We have motion to approve the $2,773,336 guaranteed maximum price contract. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. You bought yourself a police station.
I just wanted to make Gunny sit and squirm a little bit.
Oh,
Good question.
sorry if I didn't see you before.
Hi, so my name is William Ish, and I just had a quick question. Are you going to have an open house for these, for specifically the fire and police stations, before you actually start to move in?
That's a good idea.
I expect we'll have open
Yeah,
house
yeah.
before the occupancy, before we start operating in each one of the facilities.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
But Peter's going to speak to it more specifically.
We should talk about that soon, and we can address that first with the committee and then here with you if you'd like. I think we might want to do it just the other way around. I think we might want to get in and then, very shortly thereafter, cut a ribbon and invite the public in to see the facilities as they're actually going to function, rather than before we have moved in. But we'll work through those details as staff and bring a recommendation to you about how to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Ish.
Thank you.
Just a quick,
Yeah.
will people, Steve, is the general public able to go up and just say, hey, can I take a look? Or, I mean, I know you don't want to.
There's a big fence.
I know there's a big fence, but if somebody was curious enough,
Yes. If somebody is has a desire to visit the job site, we can make those arrangements, but it is something by appointment only,
yes,
please.
yes, obviously.
So, and feel free to contact me
It's
to do that.
because of the safety, yeah.
Yeah, for safety purposes.
Yep.
Absolutely. Love to have visitors.
All right, so I believe there's, you all set?
Yes, I am.
So there's one more item under police fire facilities.
There is. This is a small amendment to the contract with Northeast Collaborative Architects. Again, for three very clearly identifiable reasons. The scope of work that was embodied in the original contract addressed all of everything that had been originally planned for all three sites, including both the design phase work and the construction phase observation work and further design support. These three items that comprise this proposed change order are $4,000 for the design work related to the demolition of the West Brattleboro Fire Station and the installation of the parking lot and landscaping at that site. You'll remember that that was an item that was separated from the original scope of work. There was some discussion about the possibility of preserving the building on site. Been advised by the West Brattleboro Association that that's no longer being pursued, so we can more concretely now proceed towards the ultimate demolition of that building and the creation of the parking lot and landscaping to replace it in compliance with the DRV approval. And that design work for that piece of work will be $4,000. There's $5,300 in this change order for the parking lot and related site improvements that we've discussed previously this evening that added to the scope of the project at 62 Black Mountain Road, and $4,000 for the fit-up of the tenant space at 62 Black Mountain Road, again, as discussed earlier this evening. This, similar to the construction costs that we discussed related to this tenant space fit-up, these design fees also will be split 50-50 between the tenant and the town. So we will recover $2,000 of this $4,000 cost in payments over the course of the first 4 years of the lease. The Police Fire Facilities Building Committee recommended approval, recommended select board approval of this third amendment to the agreement between Northeast Collaborative Architects and the town of Brattleboro. And town staff and Steve Horton join the committee this evening in recommending that you approve the amendment as proposed.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on the amendment to the architect's contract? Anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance? Looks like we're ready for a motion.
To approve the third amendment to the agreement between Northeast Collaborative Architects as presented.
We have a motion to approve the newest amendment to the architect's contract as just reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Is there any other inquiry or any other business that we need to talk about relating to the police fire facilities project? Well, alrighty then.
He's holding his breath.
The next item on tonight's agenda is our continuing, no, the next item on the agenda, I'm jumping all around tonight. Next item is financial report. Hi, John.
Hey, David.
We were gonna skip you, go right to the budget, you know?
So in your packets, we have the November financial report. As of the end of November, we're 41.7% of the way through the fiscal year.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was my error.
And the general fund expenditures, after making our standard prorations, the expenditures would stand at 37.7%. So we're in good shape in the general fund. The expenses are coming in lower than where we would expect them to be at this point in time. Our utility fund was at 42.4%, and parking fund was at 36.4%. And after we do the proration for the interest and sludge removal in the utilities fund, their budget would stand at 37.1%. So again, all three funds are in very good shape at this point. Solid waste disposal, as of the end of November, although it doesn't include the November bag revenues or curbside collection costs and tipping fees, but the revenues stood at 32.8% and expenditures stood at 34.0%. The loan report shows that we had $3,438,147 in outstanding loans issued through the town's programs. Two of the loans had payments that were overdue, and one loan is in default and fully reserved. Program income shows that we had $654,932 in available funds for additional grants and loans as of the end of November. And finally, the grant report shows that we have 43 active grants at this point and 8 grants that are in the application process. And all of the details related to those grants are included in the grant report. So that concludes my overview of the financial status of the town as of the end of November. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, if you have any.
I have a question, please. You said there's about $650,000 available in program income. We haven't yet done the action item, but it's contemplated that we're going to be making a $250,000 grant for the Commonwealth Dairy expansion. About how much money on average are we bringing in monthly to supplement the program income fund, and the 250 will be coming out of the 650?
Yes, it'll be coming out of the 650. Let's see, program income, we're bringing in an income. Receipts. So far this year, well, that's because we had the Commonwealth loan paid off, but our receipts so far this year have been $731,000.
And a chunk of that was the Commonwealth money?
Yes.
Okay.
Great, it was 200.
So,
How much was the Commonwealth payback?
no, it was several $100,000. I think it was close. Let's see if I can tell from this report. Hold on.
Well, I don't need, it sounds like we've probably taken $30,000 or $40,000
in payments monthly?
Yeah, it's about 30, I think, without that one.
Yeah, great.
Commonwealth, let's see. I don't see it here.
That's okay, John, but thank you very much. It sounds like it's about $30,000 we take in a month.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from anybody on the board about the financial reports?
Yeah.
Dave?
John, you mentioned the expenditures, the semi-annual payments and annual payments that make that come in a lump in the early part of the year. Are there any payments that come later in the year that have the opposite effect?
No, there are semi-annual payments for insurance, so we're making our second insurance payment this week. So we'll have the full year posted by the end of December. There are others that bond payments that are made a few times a year, but we've made a large portion of those bond payments have already been made, so we prorate those to give us a better look at where we really stand.
No, I'm not spending the.
No. I wasn't going to offer a word of caution. I actually wanted to amplify that a little bit. So, for the known and controllable expenses, the reason we report it to you the way that we do is because of those very large items that come at the beginning of the fiscal year and then again halfway through, and it would otherwise distort it and make it potentially be a source of alarm to you, where we want to make sure that it's not. There are a couple of variables, though, to be aware of where there can be later in the fiscal, surprises that occur later in the fiscal year. So, one example would be, failure of a major piece of equipment where we've got an unbudgeted expense that just has to be addressed because, operations can't continue without it. So that happens from time to time, and we'll always report to you if that happens. But if that were to happen, in the spring, then that could have a material effect on where we end up at the end of the fiscal year. And the other thing, of course, that is always a concern at this time of year, we're off to a pretty active start for this winter. If we have a lot of snow and treacherous road conditions throughout the next 3 months, then we're going to spend a lot of money that will cause these numbers to change accordingly through the next few months.
Any other questions from anybody about the financial reports? All right, so I neglected to note when we started the public meeting that we were going to shift around the agenda a little bit in order to hear from Westgate Housing before all the other budget items rather than after. So unless there's an objection from anybody on the board, the next item will be Westgate Housing, Inc. Patrick, if you'd like to just please explain the history and then remind me your name?
John Hoover.
John
Hoover.
John Hoover will then speak a little bit to Westgate's request.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, staff is recommending a grant in the amount of $3,000 from program income to support Westgate Housing, Inc. in their restructuring program. As the board will recall, earlier this year, you approved an application for a planning grant to the Vermont Community Development Program. The grant was for $27,000, and the town agreed at that time to match it to the tune of $3,000. When the Community Development Board reviewed that application in October, unfortunately, the project failed to garner their support. Not because the project wasn't consistent with the goals of the program, but rather it was really one of the more challenging grant rounds I've seen. There were over $3.3 million in requests for 1.6 in available funds, and so it was exceedingly competitive grant round. And unfortunately, the project was not funded at that time. Thankfully, the organization has continued to move forward and to view that as a bit of a minor setback. They've gone through their project expenses. They've actually added some project expenses in order to make sure that they're fully prepared for the work that they're trying to undertake.
And thankfully, they've also been able to secure additional funding sources from other private granting foundations, and there's also a substantial request into the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. So staff continues to recommend that the board consider a grant in the amount of $3,000 to cover the gap between the funds that they have received and have committed to the project and the funds that they need in order to complete the project. I will, if the board is all right with that, I'd like to introduce John Hoover and Byron Stuckey, and maybe ask John if he can speak a little bit to the work of the restructuring project and how it's going to help to preserve the affordability of these units out in West Brattleboro.
Thanks, Patrick. I think that's an excellent idea.
Thank you.
Good evening. Well, first I want to thank Patrick for helping us when we were working on the application prepare a very compelling application for what we at Westgate still think is a compelling project. And as he said, it was a competitive round, so it's too bad that we weren't able to get that funding, but I do want to add a update that since we put in our query with the town, the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board at their meeting last Wednesday agreed to fund us a $35,000 grant for the project.
Oh, good.
So, yes,
Congratulations.
That's very
we
good.
were pleased with that. So that puts us $3,000 short for total project costs, and which is why we're coming to the town now. We're very much ready, as you might recall from when I was here this summer, we're pursuing a partnership with Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust for our continued ownership role, but bringing them in for technical support and expertise and keeping Westgate affordable, keeping it successful, and supporting our resident-controlled board. And I'll just add that the project, part of the reasons the project budget grew were as we unpacked the complexity of the project, we got some more specific quotes from the development consultant and attorney. We also, in this project budget, included some board development costs, which are fully funded by private grants. The planning grant process is it's better to give them a concise project budget than throw in board development costs and that sort of thing. So that's on there. And then there is some transactional costs that we ended up accounting for, and also an appraisal, which will assist us in our debt negotiations with the various debt holders if we know the value of the property. So thank you for considering our requests, and if anybody has any questions.
Anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Hoover? Anybody who's in attendance have any questions? Well, I'm just going to say it sounded like a great idea in the late summer, early fall, as I recall, when you applied. And we're glad that you were able to persevere and get the funding from the Housing Conservation Board rather than from the alternate source. And I think it's a great idea. We're ready for motion, please.
I move that we approve a grant in the amount of $3,000 from program income for the Westgate Housing, Inc. project, contingent upon a commitment of $62,000 from other sources for the Westgate Housing Restructuring Project.
And I was going to ask if it was contingent, but I see it in the motion, but it sounds like you've also secured the funding. Excellent.
That's good.
We have a motion to approve $3,000 grant for Westgate Housing for their housing restructuring project. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Everybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. The next item on tonight's agenda is our budget smorgasbord. So Peter's going to walk through 10 different minor budget items.
I am.
Run
If
through
it's
it.
acceptable to the select board, what I'd like to do before we go through each of the individual 10 items, which, by the way, represent the various elements of our general fund budget that are not directly within the operation of a particular department. So this is indeed the smorgasbord, it's the catch-all. But before we do that and do our normal review where we go to each section and hit a couple of highlights and answer any questions you have, I'd like to call out 4 significant changes that are going to occur in our budget because of some things that we now know that we didn't know at the time that we proposed the budget, some of which we've just learned about in the last week. So I'd like to go through those 4 things because they are of greater magnitude. It's going to cause us to flip back and forth a little bit, so I apologize for that, but I'll take you to each of the 4 pages and talk a little bit about each of those 4 items, and then we can come back and do the review of these relatively more minor things. So the first change is on page 7. At the top of page 7, it's the risk management cluster of 4 line items. 2 of those line items are going to change. The workers' compensation number will increase from $474,375 to $492,700. I'll come back and talk about that in just a moment.
So what's the total increase now?
So the
You know
total
the number and the percentage?
I
don't even mean to put you on the spot. I mean,
no, that's fine. I'm pretty sure I have it here. The total. No, I don't have the total. The increase in the change. Sorry. It's a 19% increase instead of a 15% increase, but I didn't put the dollars down.
yeah. Okay, it's about $19,000 more.
Yeah.
It's almost $80,000.
The item immediately below that, the general liability number,
80,200.
is going to decrease substantially. We had proposed 198,975, and it's going to be 136,950. So that is changing from an increase of 5% to a decrease of 28%.
Huh. Wow.
The reason for these 2 changes, although I don't know all the reasons in terms of the formula that's used by the VLCT passive that provides our insurance coverage, I can say that the most important thing is that these are now based on real numbers that have been provided to us by passive for this coming year. So our first 6 months are a known figure rather than an estimated figure, and our second 6 months are estimated off of that known figure. So this is very solid. It won't be exactly correct because we still have that second 6 months when a year from now we get our new number for the calendar year 2018. But these are very solid numbers as compared to the estimate that we prepared last summer. The increase in the workers' comp is disappointing. We already were projecting a fairly significant increase there, but it is symptomatic of something we have already talked about here. We've recognized as part of our comprehensive review that workers' comp expenses are increasing too quickly. We have prepared a modified workers' compensation policy for ways in which both in our internal staff management of this, as well as in our reliance on medical providers outside, we intend to be more attempt to more directly control workers' comp usage and costs, and we hope to reverse that trend of significant increases in costs. But because of the lag in these insurance formulas and the fact that they use multiple years of claims data in the calculation of the premium figures, we will still in the long-term financial plan project a few more years of increase in this area even as we try to turn that ship around. For this year, we're having an increase that's larger than was originally expected. General liability, I can't explain to you exactly why it's down. We have had some pretty good experience, but the magnitude of this decrease is greater than the improved experience that we've had. It's just the calculation that they did and the premium that they've quoted to us is very favorable, and so we're able to achieve a nice savings there.
Peter, can I say one thing
Please.
on that? So what we assumed in general liability is an increase of 5% over what we're going to pay this year. And I would say under normal circumstances, that's probably a pretty reasonable assumption. But now we're going to have a new building for the police. We're going to have an expanded building for Central Fire. And we're going to have another new building for West Brattleboro. And I'm wondering whether we should increase that 5% a little bit more just to account for the possibility that those rates may go up a little more than.
So let's you and I look at that and call the league, and we may provide further input to the board before you make your final decisions on this in January. I think those are fair points. We should check and see if that's going to have an impact.
Okay.
Can I just make an observation before you go on to the other two figures? Which is, in a 3-year span from 15 through 18, the workers' comp premium rises $175,000 from 316 to 492. And I'm putting on my little math cap right here, but it looks like it's like a 60% increase.
That's correct.
Over a 3-year period, which is really sort of staggering. It's 20% a year.
Yep.
And I'm sure that's caught your attention, and it'll be part of the operational work that we're doing over the coming years. But it's a lot of increase.
We actually had forecast if we didn't take any action to impact that trend, the long-term plan forecasts an $800,000 cost for this line item in the 5th year out in 2022. So we can't just let that happen. We need to take action to try to reduce that liability, and so we've begun to do that.
Is this part of an experience cost? I mean, is this based on experience solely?
It's both. So, I heard Dave mention in this last little exchange, it's part of a national problem. It is a national issue. There are definitely within the insurance markets, workers' comp is a rapidly increasing cost. Our costs are increasing more rapidly than what we see out there in the world. And that's based on some pretty unfavorable experience that we've had in the last few years. And we're going to work hard to correct that and hopefully have fewer injuries and definitely get people back to work sooner when they do have an injury.
So that bottom line, I did some quick math, goes from 698, 350 to 654, 650. Is that correct, John? It looks like about a $43,700 savings.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And we have some more savings and some more costs to report in 2 other line items. So
There you go.
If we go further down.
Right, but that's not a
I'm sorry.
final number yet either, because John pointed out that we have to check what's anticipated
Right.
cost given the new facilities that are going to be coming online.
Yep.
So can I just ask you quick, John, wouldn't we get a favorable on that if we're in a new building, or is it
With
because
sprinklers and.
is it because of the cost of the building?
It's because we have replacement value.
We have replacement value. Okay.
Cost.
So it's not the fact that it's a safer building.
No.
Okay.
But there could be
But there
a
could
value
be-
to that
right,
as well,
there could
which
be
is
a-
why we need to
right.
do some more additional research and give you
Well,
our advice
we're
on
close to a
that.
fire department, right, John?
So
That's right. Where's the hydrant?
if you go to page 8 under bonds and notes, the lease expense item is listed at 193.9. It's actually going to be 126,925. There is the entire difference between those two numbers is accounted for by a note that is being defeased this fiscal year that was for rolling stock. So there were a variety of different pieces of equipment that were rolled into that debt. That we're finished paying that in this fiscal year. Next fiscal year, that 126,925 that'll be the amount in this item will reflect just the Honeywell cost. That's the continuing paying off of the Honeywell expense. There's no other leases in that line item, and we don't intend to place any more in that unless we get into some extraordinary situation where we need to enter into a lease. In a kind of an emergency situation we would address with the board. Our intent is obviously to buy as much as we can with cash. We've been through that conversation many times. And in the rare instance like the fire engine conversation that we've had earlier in this budget cycle, we wouldn't necessarily expect to lease it. We'd expect probably to do a bank note depending on what the terms were that were available at the time. So we'll address those kinds of decisions as they come up. But for now, what we expect is that 126,925 is going to be a static figure through the remainder of the long-term planning period until 2022, at which point this line item would go to zero.
So I just want to make sure this change of $67,000 savings is really just a matter of having realized after building the budget that we're paying it off and all we have left is Honeywell.
That's correct.
Yeah, this is a change. It's just
this is a number that in the first instance should have been 126,925, but we've discovered it now, and so we're bringing it to you now.
Excellent.
And the last item is on page 18, the very end of the budget, the transfer to solid waste. We have a solid waste update later in this agenda. I'll give more of the explanation of the reasons why at that time. But the $400,000 transfer to solid waste will need to be $431,836. The $31,836 increase there relates directly to the Solid Waste Management District's cost to close the MRF. Again, we'll talk about that more later in this meeting. But that's a known number and one that will need to increase in this as we go to final decisions. So the total impact of those four items for this evening, again, subject to the further review of the insurance item, is a decrease in the proposed budget of $78,839.
78 what?
$78,839, and that's about 2/3 of a penny. So because of the magnitude of these four items taken together, I thought it was important to present those to you as, you know, things that we know or almost know in the case of the general liability line item at this point in the process, and we'll come back and give you a refined, either a confirmation or a revised number on that 136,950 for the general liability.
Before we go to the other 10 items that were listed, are there any other questions about those four changes in the budget? All right, when do we start on those next 10 items?
So the first of them is general services. That's on page 6. The only thing that's changing significantly here is the reduction in the cost of the audit services. You'll recall from when we awarded that bid and discussion we've had about that previously during the budget process. That's going from, for the general fund, the cost is being reduced from $49,500 to $18,000, a $31,500 decrease.
That's huge.
Can we interrupt while you're doing that?
Absolutely.
We skipped attorney, so we'll go back to attorney.
Okay.
But also,
Sorry. Yep.
do I understand that the audit is all but completed and we're going to have the results presented to us soon?
In January, absolutely. Yep. So, yeah, I'm sorry I skipped over the attorney. So there, it's just a increase of $1,500. That's the same amount as the increase a year ago, to a $104,000 retainer and a $110,000 total budget for legal services.
That's a year contract every year,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, you appoint subject to ratification by town meeting.
All right, next.
So back to general services. Sorry, I jumped over attorney. The tax abatements item, I just wanted to note there, that's an item that it's going to be what it's going to be. It's not an item that we can accurately forecast from year to year, but we do see that now for a number of years it's been higher than the $10,000 that was the standard budgeted amount for this. And so we thought it was prudent to increase that by $10,000 to $20,000 just to better reflect the likelihood that it's going to be a figure of 20 or higher.
Quickly, John, I just wanted to go back to the audit number again, because that's a significant difference in numbers.
Yep.
And comparing our old audit to the new audit, what is the significant difference, other than the obvious, with what we paid for it? But give me a little bit of what you see that's in or not in there, a little bit of background.
It's the amount of time that they spent actually conducting the audit, the amount of testing they do, the level to which they test things. This audit firm that conducted this audit put in far fewer hours than our previous auditor did. Each auditor has different standards in terms of what comfort level do they need to get to in order to certify those statements. And this audit firm did it with a lot fewer hours than our previous auditor.
And so you're extremely comfortable with this audit? Because I think, when you say something like what you just said, that gives me concern as to, say, the level of involvement, maybe the way that they expedite their information might be a little bit different. But the time sequence obviously is where you save the money.
Yep.
But are you comfortable? Because this is your baby here, and we're not going to know any difference unless you go, I'm not comfortable with the way that they perform this, and I'd like to go out and maybe rebid the auditing process again.
Okay, I'm comfortable with it. They came up with some good questions as they were going through the audit. They made some observations that our previous auditor had not made. We, for the first time, actually produced all of the financial statements and basically just turned them over to them. So they had no hours spent really preparing the statements. So we did everything in-house this year, and then, as I said, we just turned it over to them. They produced the single audit. We gave them all the information to produce the single audit, and they produced that audit. So yeah, I'm comfortable with the numbers.
Good.
Yeah, I recall when this contract came before us, we had the same question, and
Yeah.
I think you had a separate meeting to verify with them that they were looking at what we were expecting.
Yeah.
And I recall that one of the reasons that they gave for coming in so much lower is the quality of the records and the ease with which they can be audited because of that.
Yep.
John?
Well, and I'm going to get off the subject of that for a second and go back to, because this kind of raises a question for me. Have we ever thought about, and this is no disrespect to anybody, but have we ever thought about bidding out the attorney's fees?
We do every now and then.
But we haven't in years.
Well, I know.
So I'm just wondering if we should have like an every 3-year thing, or I don't know. I'm just wondering it. I mean, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and I don't know. I don't, I'm not up on law, on how much a retainer, for a lawyer gets, or. So,
Well, we had an intentional discussion last year about whether to put it out to bid last year, and decided not to do that last year. If we want to consider that for this year, what I'm going to suggest is that we ask the administration to look at that and to look at the timing of that issue, and then to report back to us after that work has been done in order to assess whether that's possible or prudent at this time.
yeah, I'm just wondering, like, if we set up like every 3 years, it should go out to, just to see if we are being competitive or not. I don't know. I have no clue.
I believe it, I'm not sure, you might have been here, John, I know that David wasn't, but we actually had a conversation about going back to in-house counsel.
That's what
on staff.
reminded me of it. Right.
So, and And that's an entirely different conversation that if the board is looking into that. But I remember around 2007, 2008,
Yeah.
the board did have a discussion, and at that time, they didn't feel that it was prudent to do. But then, back then, I think that line item was around $74,000, $75,000, maybe a little bit higher. I don't recall off the top of my head, so.
Would you like a staff report on that, or I don't know where the board's?
You mean right now or to come back?
Right.
Well, you had suggested we
Yeah.
bring you something
Well,
for a future
yeah.
meeting, which we'd be happy to do.
Right, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Great.
Let me make a note of that.
Thank you. What are we on to now? Risk management?
You're just making a note, and then we're going to continue on.
Yes, the next is risk management, which we've covered in the discussion of the two major changes there. So moving on to benefits. That is further down, page 7. Note, there's a lot that's changing in this area, primarily because of the changes that we've made in the retirement and the health insurance programs to achieve very significant savings. So the retirement line item is going down $118,000. That is completely because of the change that we made in the conversion to VEMR's D for the civilian employees. There is a slight incremental predictable increase that's occurring in the unchanged benefit for the public safety employees. So the net impact of the two things for this coming year is $118,000 decrease in that item. And then on health insurance, you see a very large decrease there. That's the premium that we pay. So that's going down by $267,008. But there's new line items over on the top of page 8 for HRA expense and HRA administration.
And who gets that money?
That HRA expense is paid to the providers, the doctors and hospitals and ambulance services and whoever is actually providing the services. The $20,000 is paid for the people who process the payments on behalf of the town. Just to refresh your recollection, what this represents is the opportunity we have to save a very substantial amount of money by buying less coverage from Blue Cross, increasing the deductible to a very high level, and paying much lower premiums to Blue Cross Blue Shield. And then paying the difference between the out-of-pocket cost that's paid by the employees and their families and the higher deductible. There's a gap in there that we pay through this HRA, which is a health reimbursement arrangement.
Who does that for us?
Those are, we have a contract with a company called Health Choice, I believe. Is that
Choice Strategies.
Choice Strategies. Choice Strategies pays those bills for us in conjunction with Blue Cross Blue Shield, so that everything is properly accounted for within the Blue Cross system, and Blue Cross knows, basically from Blue Cross's perspective, when Choice Strategies is making the payments instead of a particular household, it's hitting the Blue Cross books exactly the same way, so it's counting towards the deductible for that household for that year. Once it gets to the deductible, then Blue Cross is paying the bills just like they normally would. So this HRA expense is $192,500, but you set that against the premium savings of $267,000, and we have a net savings in the health insurance program of almost $75,000, $74,508, which is a little over 4% decrease in the cost of health insurance benefit.
And we're still waiting for developing experience in this area to see just how much employees are taking out of the health reimbursement accounts, because there's a portion of the benefit that's health savings account that becomes a vested benefit, but then the next level, which is the HRA, to the extent that employees and their families don't spend that money, it reverts back to the town.
That's correct. And it actually never leaves the town. So it's an expenditure only when services are, costs are incurred and services are rendered. And you're exactly right. We've received some good cautious, prudent advice from Richards that we started out, in such a conservative position that we had some room even in this first year to increase that HRA layer a little bit. We brought that to you back in October, and you approved that we move forward with just a cautious expansion of that layer. As we get another couple of years experience under our belts, we'll have a very good feel for within our own universe of employees and employees' families, what our experience is in that area so that we can calibrate that well and potentially achieve even some more savings there, although I think at this point we'd be not predicting any particular additional amount of savings there.
Well, I got into the wrong business. Insurance. Insurance seems to be the way to go.
Banking is good too.
Yeah.
Banking is.
Yeah.
I would say it is a very expensive
It's a
part of operating our enterprise,
Yeah.
but here's a year where we're saving 4%
I know.
of the cost, reducing the cost by 4% as opposed to seeing a 5 or 10% increase. It's been really common in the last decade to have double-digit increases in this particular item. So this is a good solid place for us in terms of being able to control operating costs and free up some cash for other needs or reducing the taxes.
You can take us a question.
Can I ask you, why is our unemployment compensation so high? Who are we laying off that's collecting against the town?
That's actually not a particularly high figure at
$10,000?
yeah.
Well, I'm saying, who do we lay off?
So
We don't lay people off.
Yeah,
we sometimes have employees who leave without resigning, and depending on the cause of their termination, sometimes they're entitled to unemployment insurance, sometimes they're not.
Usually they have a hearing, right?
Yes,
Isn't
and
that
sometimes we
usually-
prevail. We have contested where we believe that an employee is not entitled to unemployment benefits, and we've won those hearings. We've also lost those hearings. And there are some circumstances where it wouldn't be appropriate to contest the claim. And so,
So
we carry traditionally, I mean, I looked to Patrick and John to tell me how many years this may have been going on, but I know since I've been here, it's just been a standard $10,000 item because you just can't know whether you're going to have none or one or a few of those in a given year.
So that's just a retaining figure.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a placeholder.
Placeholder.
and there have been no expenditures this year
Right.
on that.
Next.
Next is bonds and notes, and we went over the one significant change. Big savings there in the lease expense. Human Services is next after that, and you received the separate advice for the details of this that goes to town meeting from the Human Services Committee. I would note that in addition to that set of recommendations, there's also this is the set of accounts in which the Brattleboro Climate Protection item has been authorized in previous years, and that's at the very bottom of page 8. It's actually labeled climate control. It should say climate protection, but that's that $10,000 line item there. But otherwise, what you see here is what would be recommended by the Human Services Committee.
Can I ask a
Where
question about
is the
that?
Human Services Committee report?
Is it
That's-
this one?
We have it.
Yeah, it's included in the backup notebook
Yeah,
for
it's-
today.
Today's?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I went through and I didn't see it, so.
It's like, it looks like this. It's sort of messed
Yep.
in there. Because I have a question. I'll wait till Dan
Sure.
gets it.
It's,
It's-
you got it. I just.
Well,
There it is.
question,
All right, very good.
my question is, on the sheet that was in the notebook, it said FY18 recommendations.
Because I'm not sure what mine is today.
It says FY18 recommendation, and it's 120,000. Now, I know if you add the 10 in for climate protection, that's 130.
Yes.
But here, it's 140. And the one thing I did notice, in the budget notebook, it says 140. And I did notice that, because I was sort of curious what Vermont Wilderness School is. In here, on the budget book that we have, it says we're there's a recommendation to give them 4,000, but if you actually look on the sheet that was in the notebook, there's nothing under, you see what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know
in the budget that's before you,
Yeah.
those numbers are just last year's numbers carried over to this year because we didn't receive the report of the committee until very recently.
Okay, so this.
So it was just to create the placeholder for
Okay.
level funding at 147.65 because the recommendation for your policy decision was level funding at 147.65. But now you have actually the detailed $120,000 worth of recommendations from the committee.
Right, because I always thought we didn't want it to be one. Remember we
Remind
had
me,
this,
Kate, what I got it here. I'm sorry.
because we always wanted it less than
Less,
140.
right.
And I know the 10 is included, so it's
What you've asked them to do the last couple of
It's
years is
120.
come in level, which is the part that they recommend on is 120.
Yes, okay.
But then you've got the museum in here, you've got Brattleboro climate protection. So
Okay.
there are things that are included
Okay,
in the 141
Okay.
that are the $21,000
okay.
difference.
But this, what's in the budget book is not reflective of actually what they decide.
Not agency by agency. In the total figure it is, but not agency by agency.
Well, I would move we take the $10,000 out for 10,000 for climate protection.
We're gonna have that as a different
Yes.
discussion
Right.
at another date. Unless I would prefer if you withdraw that for now, because it's gonna be a separate item. If you wanna move it now, we'll deal with it now.
I'll defer to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So Peter's got that on the list as an issue that's gotta be talked about in the future.
So can I clarify one thing? So are all these human services number in the notebook going to be replaced with the ones
With the
that-
actuals.
Well, let's clarify. I believe that there's 3 items on page 8 to 9, which are not within the Human Services Funding Committee. I believe those are the climate control, the museum, and the Women's Freedom Center.
You're exactly correct.
And I don't know the status of the Women's Freedom Center item because of a item that we adopted
Right,
2 or 4 weeks ago
right,
relating to a real estate matter.
yep.
So that may not carry over,
I believe that it should for one more year. We
All
can
right.
talk about that in greater detail if you'd like.
but that 3,765 will be carried over in the budget. And then the museum and art center is the $7,000 item, and like, we pay maintenance costs, we own the building, right?
That's correct.
So, the human services funding item is 120. And then we've got also included in this catch-all human services budget item, 10,765 for the museum and Women's Freedom Center, which is gonna carry over. And then we have to make a decision whether to give the 10K for the climate protection.
Right, but like the Vermont Wilderness School is being budgeted in our notebook.
No,
but it's
this
not-
sheet here
That's what I'm
is
saying.
gonna replace
That's-
all of
that's
those
my
items
question.
except for those 3 I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
talked about.
that's my question.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. Okay?
yep, yep.
And when we get, we used to, there have been years where we got successive versions of the budget
Yeah.
every time there was a change, but this town manager has provided us with
Right.
one revised budget
Yep.
after we go through everything.
Yep.
And so the next version of the budget we get will have these items as presented by the Human Services Funding Committee, plus museum and the Women's Crisis Center, Women's Freedom Center, and then we make the decision by climate control.
That's
Right? All right. Any other questions about human services funding at this point?
I can-
All right, next.
Next is auxiliary services, page 9. That's where streetlights, civil defense, the bus service, and the ambulance service are, and the only significant change there is the 11% increase, $23,500 increase in the ambulance service costs, and you'll recall that that's because we are in this 5-year process of phasing out our discount. And so each year over this 5-year period, we're going to see substantial increases for Rescue Inc., and then we're going to see that level back out to be hopefully more modest increases going forward after that. We ready to move forward?
Yep.
The next item is on page 11. It's the Municipal Center budget. I would note for the record that I fully realize that there is a whole different set of issues and we'll be addressing together and decisions that the board will be making regarding this building once the police department has left. But for this evening's purposes, what you have is an operating budget that's proposed that would be, I'm going to say all but level funded. It's actually a slight reduction of $4,000 from a year ago for the carrying cost of operating the building as we currently are here. So that's a decrease primarily related to the heating costs here in the building, using a $2 a gallon estimate rather than a $2.50 per gallon estimate. We're currently paying $1.57 for this winter. And so that creates an almost $6,000 savings. There's a couple of items that are a little bit up, and the net is a $4,000 savings to $162,512.
Just speaking of fuel costs, John, could you remind me, when does the bid happen?
Generally happens in the spring. School is the lead on that, and I can call them and we can get that going, in the spring.
So we generally plan ahead and then we get the bid in after town meeting?
Yeah, generally, yep.
2 years ago, it came in prior to town meeting, and it was one of the last minute changes that the board made in recommending for the budget for town meeting consideration. Last year, the numbers came in after town meeting.
Good.
Next is the regional services. That's on page 15. And there's an increase in both. The Wyndham Regional Commission number is increasing by $5,000 to $30,000. The 20% increase, you've seen a letter in your backup from the commission. They had gone to an indexing system where they were going to make increases only based on inflation. And in the 2 years immediately following that, inflation was flat. So they had increasing costs, but no increasing revenue. And they're playing some catch up. And so they've written that explanation out to all the municipalities and have asked for a 20% 1 year increase, indicating that this will flatten back out again next year.
Just one question. A lot of their cost and services around brownfields projects. And since our planning department got pretty significant brownfields funding,
Right.
is there a way that we can adjust based on that?
There isn't. Just like our brownfields program, theirs is completely grant funded, and that's true of a lot of what the regional commission does. So the funds that the municipalities pay are the overhead costs rather than the program costs. Yep.
And as with other regional organizations like SEVITS and like the Solid Waste Management District, we get an assessment based on population, whether or not we're really using those services or not.
Yes. And the next item, the county tax item, actually differs from those in that it is ad valorem based. It's property tax grand list based rather than population based. But it is also a figure that is provided to us, and this particular one, there's no choice whatsoever. So we're obligated to pay it. The next and final item for this evening's summary is the solid waste figure, and that one we actually covered in the overview of the four major changes. The solid waste transfer is going to increase, and rather than being the $400,000 that was originally proposed, it's going to be the $431 and change. Before
431,836.
431,836. And the one other thing I would note here at transfers is that the capital fund transfer is in that same cluster of accounts there on page 18 at the very end of the budget. And we will be coming back to that when we come back to the unfinished items for your future decision-making. We'll be coming back to that in January with additional information as you make capital budget decisions and fund balance decisions and address the other pending matters.
So I just want to make sure, as to the transfer to solid waste, you've given us an increase of 31,836 for closure costs at the materials recycling facility.
Yes.
But we made the decision, we'll be talking about it like in a couple of items on the agenda, to begin extricating ourselves
Yes.
from the recycling morass at the solid waste management district. And are we going to have new figures based upon our contract negotiations with Triple T, or we're just going to have to budget this amount and then see what our experience is next year?
It's that, but it's not quite as, we'll have to wait and see as that sounds. So you'll recall from the decision-making documents that you reviewed, I think it was the last time, it might have been 2 times ago, there is an uncertainty to this transition we're going to make because we're going to be paying the fee at the door at Casella rather than a one-time annual amount in the assessment to the district. In the end, the town's still going to be, would have ended up paying its fair share cost of the tipping fee in any case, but that impact is always deferred by a year in the assessment process. Instead, we're going to be paying it in real time. Because of that, we can't be exactly certain what the expenses will be. We might end up a little bit less or a little bit more than what was otherwise expected. But because the order of magnitude there is very small, we feel that in the absence of this $31,000 and change for the closure costs, that the $400,000 would have been a solid budget figure, even though we're making the change.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance about those 10 remaining individual budget items? Franz?
From the Finance Committee. Going back to the attorney's fees, and I know you're going to study it and report back, but is that based on an anticipated number of hours? How do you come up with the number as it is?
So you're foreshadowing, actually. We'll do a fuller report and we'll give proper, complete advice to the board on this. But I'll share right now that I believe that the arrangement is very good for the town. The fact that it is a monthly retainer fee, and with as hard as Bob works and as well as he serves the town, his experience both in municipal law in general and in the town of Brattleboro, there is never a time that we can't get to Bob and get what we need from him. And we're never charged based on however long it takes him to do the work. So I'm sure there are months that we rely on him a little less, and his monthly retainer is a nice deal for him and the firm. I know there are months when we place a very heavy demand on him and call on him a lot more than normal. There's times every bit of litigation that we get involved with, we pay only the costs of litigation. Whether we're sued or whether we do the suing, he represents the town within his retainer. There's never an hourly rate cost for litigation. So I think it's a really fiscally sound approach, as well as in the current arrangement, the current relationship with Bob Fisher, one that is serving the town well for legal advice.
Thank you. Also, a question on the Municipal Center budget. There was discussion at previous meetings about the carrying costs of the new police department up on Black Mountain Road, and what the maintenance and custodial expenses, et cetera, would be for that. Now, the Municipal Center budget doesn't show any decrease for not having the police station here. Right. Is that based on the timing of things primarily, or is that just based on the fact that there's no savings because it's still the same building?
Right. So, there might be a very small savings if we heat the space less or, have lower maintenance costs in the space. But that would be assuming that it sits idle, which would be not where we hope to end up. We're working right now in ways that we'll be able to discuss publicly sometime in the months ahead to have a solution that would be smarter than that. So whether it's someone else coming in to occupy the vacated space here, in which case there would be a substantial amount of revenue for the town, but still the same carrying cost, or whether it's, that we don't think that's going to be viable, and so we're going to look for an option that costs the town less money. One way or the other, there'll be some kind of a solution that changes this status quo. For the moment, there's no way to know where that's going to land, and so what we've proposed is one more year of the carrying cost for this building.
Okay, good. I also have a question about the police budget, which was not addressed tonight, on overtime expenses. I don't know if now is the right time to ask that, or some other time or setting.
I'm going to follow up on issues relating to the municipal center, but you go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. When the staffing arrangements were changed somewhat for the police department, authorizing officers to be brought on board before there was an absolute need, it seems to me that one of the arguments was that it would help with overtime expenses. And yet in the fiscal year 2018 budget, there's virtually no change in overtime expense at all. I'm just wondering what accounts for that.
Because we're not up to full staff yet, and so we're still relying on assigning a lot of excess overtime.
So that would be something we'd look for in a subsequent budget, perhaps?
Yes, absolutely. We
Okay.
would certainly hope to bring that number down in a subsequent budget.
If we get up to staffing.
We have 2 officers just finished the academy, right?
Yeah, but
So
we were short 4.
Yeah.
So now we're short 2 with 2 brand new ones that aren't yet operating on their own. They're still in their field training now. And our expectation is it'll be sometime next year at the earliest, possibly early 2018, before we're up to full.
Okay, good. Also,
Because of the cycles, I'm sorry, the board knows this, but I'm not sure the public does. I think I should finish the thought with, that's because of the cycles at the police academy. So it's not a matter of us not wanting to move faster to fill the open slots, but we only get opportunities to do that twice a year.
Okay, thank you. There was also something in here that I just didn't understand what it was. It was a second overtime, a smaller amount for overtime.
Yep.
That had some funny term attached to it.
That's outside overtime, and
What is that?
That is directly related to a revenue item. That is for when people hold a privately organized event that requires some security, but it's to protect the public interest as opposed to private security. And so where we issue, for instance, a gathering permit that says, yeah, you can gather with 300 people on the common, but you're going to need to hire 2 off-duty police officers to provide the security at that event. And so it runs like an enterprise. We actually cover the cost of the officer and the administrative cost for those engagements.
So, but there's a revenue item
There's a
elsewhere
revenue item that
for
more
that.
than offsets
Okay,
it.
that's what I'm.
That's why it's shown as a separate
Right.
overtime item, so that we can always do the math to make sure we're properly calibrated between that revenue item and that expense item.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sure.
So I'm just going to note as to the municipal center, we have begun some discussions in executive session addressing certain contract and real estate related issues relating to the ultimate disposition of the municipal center. It's premature for us to be able to talk about those things in public, but I do expect there to be a very vigorous, lively discussion about the future of the municipal center as soon as we're ready to have that discussion, by virtue of completing negotiations that can't really be talked about in public until we're far enough along to be able to talk about it. But it's a topic that's generated very keen interest that
We're gonna have to separate Kate and I.
is likely going to spill over and become fully public for a decision that's going to be made fully publicly once the time comes. And right now, we're just carrying forward in the budget the status quo. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Unless there are any other questions or comments regarding the items we covered tonight, what I'd like to do before we finish the budget item is go through a list of what I believe to be the open items, so that you'll have an opportunity to say what I might have forgotten, and we can make sure our list is complete so that as we prepare for the January select board meetings, we're preparing the information you're going to need to make final budget decisions. So tonight, we've added the potential bidding out of the town attorney services and the Brattleboro climate protection decision as two things that are pending matters to be addressed in the January meetings. Prior to tonight, we still had coming back to the capital budget in multiple different ways that I won't itemize right now, but there's a lot of work yet to be done there. One specific one is the decision regarding the rescue pumper that we proposed, and the reason I isolate that is because in the discussion the night that we went into great detail on that, one of you asked about the possibility of buying that vehicle with fund balance rather than modifying the capital plan. So that is something that we specifically ought to discuss in the context of the other capital budget decisions, is whether you want to bump some of that capital work out to a future year as I had proposed, or whether you want to get all of it done or all of it that you're ready to approve done and apply fund balance to the rescue pumper. There's also the broader use of fund balance decision, of course, that needs to be made. That'll be the very last thing that we do when you've made all your other decisions, so that you can relate level of taxation to fund balance and the possible particular uses of the fund balance. We were asked a question about addressing or summarizing the technology investments that have been made in the past few years, so we'll provide additional information on that. Likewise, an informational item is the library endowment report. That when the library presentation was made, you asked to see that. We'll be happy to present that. Excuse me, for policy decisions, the swimming pool hours item needs to come back with some additional information so you know what the cost would be if you do extend, open up earlier in the early summer or extend later in the summer towards Labor Day. The Creamery Bridge question, a possible upgrade there and a rental policy. And questions related to the parking fund transfer. So there'll be a broader discussion of that related to the various factors that go into the parking fund transfer, but two specific questions that arose were whether the parking fund should help pay for the street sweeper along with the general fund, and whether parking ticket revenue that is written by police officers who are general fund employees ought to be a general fund revenue rather than being a parking fund revenue along with the tickets written by the parking enforcement officers. We'll come back with information about all those parking related matters as a set. And the last item is the use of fund balance.
So procedurally, we're going to take next week off.
Oh, thanks.
You sure, buddy? And then,
Thanks, buddy.
Bummer, says Dave. And then we'll be back at it on January 4th and January 3rd. And we'll have various budget decisions to be made through the first 2 or 3 weeks of January. And then I anticipate that we'll be moving towards final approval of our budget in the last or next to last week of January, probably the 24th. Jan, when does the town report need to be finalized?
The warning has to be posted no more than 40, no less than 30 days before a town meeting, so we're in the end of January, the 1st of February, the first few days of February.
February, so it'll be the end of January, beginning of February. If we can finish up the work on the budget, in the 4th week in January, so much the better. And once again, we encourage everybody to continue participating and gathering information about this budget process. Anybody has any questions or comments? Like I've said before, we decided to do this budget process during our Tuesday meetings and during Tuesday meeting times rather than a Saturday meeting starting or Sunday meeting that went all day, because we wanted to make sure that the public had full access to the information, and we continue to be committed to that public access and transparency. So anybody's got any questions, please come on out and ask us or contact any one of us. Dick, did you have another question?
Yeah, could I get one more item added to our list? And that would be, we had a request for power up in West Brattleboro in the park area up there. I think that would be something that would be part of our budget discussion.
I'll look into that and I'll circle back to you. I don't think it's going to need to be part of your discussion because my recollection is that is actually getting addressed as part of the construction project, but hadn't been addressed yet, which is why it became a complication recently.
Okay.
But I'll check it.
If it is, that's great. If not,
And don't hesitate to raise additional issues or anything else that's lingering with the town manager so that we can make sure everything's on the table before a final decision is made. Anything else about budget tonight? All right, so the next item on tonight's agenda is a municipal planning grant. I guess that's Patrick, or is it Peter?
I'll handle that one. Let me get to it. So, you'll recall that we were here a few months back, I believe, several weeks ago, to ask that we have your permission to apply for this grant. You did approve it, we did apply, and we are receiving it, which is great news because it's going to allow us to do a downtown parking study. And the downtown parking study is an essential first step towards the creation of the downtown master plan that is flowing out of the town plan process. So it's an important piece of work for us. It's going to have benefits beyond just the planning work. It'll relate to some of the things we've been talking about regarding the parking system, some more sort of active real-time issues that we're addressing. So we recommend that you approve the item as it's presented this evening for the acceptance and appropriation of the $20,000 grant.
Anybody have any questions about the municipal planning grant? On the board or anybody who's in attendance?
And I see by this thing, we're hiring a consultant.
We
Is
are,
that-
yes, absolutely, yep. And actually, one other thing I should mention, in addition to the planning benefit of it and the relationship to some of the current downtown issues, it's also going to be useful related to the Hinsdale Bridge project because some of the parking-related issues will overlap with the transportation traffic flow issues that are going to be addressed at Lower Main Street.
We're ready for a motion, please.
I move that we accept and appropriate a municipal planning grant in the amount of $20,000 from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development for a downtown parking study.
We have a motion to accept the municipal planning grant, $20,000. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is the parking fund budget. I guess that one goes right over to Patrick. Patrick?
Yes, sir. So, as the board will recall, earlier this year in May, you approved a parking fund budget for fiscal 17. At the same time, the board authorized the expenditure of $260,000 worth of public improvements to parking fund assets in the parking capital plan. However, during the discussion, even as the board approved the capital plan as proposed, there was some concern about the balance of energy efficiency projects versus surface lot improvements, and some additional detail was requested. I'm here this evening to sort of try and provide that additional detail and hopefully choose a pathway to move forward. To summarize the recommendation coming from staff this evening, there is a project at the Harmony lot which is being recommended, and then there is either a set of energy efficiency improvements at the Brattleboro Transportation Center that the board could support, or alternatively, a set of additional surface lot improvements which might also make good, prudent use of available resources in the parking fund. In addition to the memo provided in the packet, there are a couple of other items. One is a report developed by Stevens and Associates here in Brattleboro that analyzes the condition of a set of parking assets, both within the parking fund and within the general fund, and a series of maps or diagrams that show where some of the recommended solutions would be situated. As part of the study, there were other maps that were generated. They're not included in the packet, but I could make them available to anybody if they're interested for some of the more involved or more expensive projects that staff are not recommending. In addition to that, there is two different alternates for a capital plan. And one of the things I'd like to draw your attention to is that in preparing these two different alternate capital plans, really only made changes to the fiscal 17 numbers and not to the impact in the out years. It was an oversight on my part, and hopefully it won't be too problematic. if the board is able to provide some direction and make a decision based on the discussion this evening, we can show that impact in the out years and bring that back to you most likely after town meeting when we get together to take a look at the fiscal 18 parking fund. But probably makes sense to start in the Harmony lot. As many of you will recall, and I'm sure virtually everybody knows, the condition in the Harmony lot is not good. The surface of the parking lot itself is in poor condition, and the sidewalks that surround the lot are also in desperately poor condition. And there are a lot of the paving stones which have popped up, and we're hoping with the project that staff is recommending to be able to replace all the sidewalks, replace the curbing, do a skim coat and a resurfacing of the asphalt, and as you can see from the Stevens report, there are other alternatives that are possible in the lot. However, the costs are pretty substantial and seem beyond our means at this time. And so what staff is recommending is the more moderate program to resurface the lot, to replace the sidewalks and the curbing. And that is coming in at a cost of, I believe, about $116,000, $116,200. One other thing I think is important to note about the Harmony lot is there are a couple of different locations in the parking lot that are actually privately owned. They may appear and they may function as public space, but they are in fact private property. And that runs somewhat on the eastern side. On the back side of the Main Street properties, there are a number of properties there where I'm not exactly sure how much space we're talking about, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 or 12 feet into the traveled way that are privately owned. Also on the southern end of the property, near, for example, where Arkham is located, there's a sliver of that sidewalk which looks and feels and functions like public space, but is in fact part of the property which is associated with that building. There are a couple of different ways in which the town could move forward with the project at Harmony Lot and address improvements on these private lands. For example, we could seek buy-in from the private property owners to to pay for the cost of improvements on those slivers of land. That would likely be unsuccessful. We could I forget the third alternative, but what staff would recommend is that in exchange for a hold harmless agreement, that the town consider paying for the upgrade at those locations. So as to make the appearance uniform, rather than leave those slivers of land untouched and unimproved, rather make the improvement there and do so by coordinating with the private property owners in exchange for a hold harmless agreement. Let me stop there and ask if there are any questions about that.
So I've been trying to figure out what's the difference between recommendation 1A and 1B. I think I just figured it out.
1A.
Right.
Oh,
because
gotcha.
You've got recommendation 1, and it's got an A or a B, not labeled as such. And so,
Either or.
but we're only gonna be able to do one or the other. So let me make sure I understand if I could.
Yes, sir.
The first one, which you just talked about, is just the Harmony lot. You're saying $116,200 worth of surface work.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
when you say 116, when I'm looking at the cost estimates here, in the report, it says 124, 100.
Sure.
So what number I want to make sure we're talking about
If I can speak to that, it is in fact 116,200. In the memo, I make note of the fact that a very limited portion, but certain of the improvements that are being recommended in that project have already been performed in coordination with the Green Street retaining wall project. And so, whereas in the Stevens report, it recommends, I think it's $14,000 for culverts, or not culverts, for conduit, for lighting. About half of that has already been performed. And that reduces the overall project from the 123 down to the 116.2.
So you're recommending in either alternative doing $116,200 worth of surface work essentially in the Harmony lot.
Correct.
Then you're saying that either we can spend more money on the other lots or more money on energy efficiency.
Correct.
So you want to talk to us then about those two things?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Please.
So, under the first alternative, the town has the opportunity to invest substantially in energy efficiency projects that were recommended by Margaret Dillon, and I'm sure you folks will remember her report. And these improvements would be at the Brattleboro Transportation Center. The improvements would involve the installation of a pellet heating system, a wood pellet heating system. It would pay for air sealing of the occupied space, for the Dottie space and the experienced goods space and the parking space. It would insulate the concrete. Apparently a lot of heat is lost into the concrete, and so there would be some insulation, there'd be some window quilts installed as well, and some additional variable rate control systems with the heat program. And so all of that cost comes down to about $155,000. Now, one of the reasons why the board might especially wish to move forward with that program is because it is underwritten in part by what's called the Wyndham Wood Heat program, which is a program being administered by the Wyndham Regional Commission, and it is the region's way of supporting energy efficiency improvements in part from resources provided by the closure of Vermont Yankee. So if the town was to move forward with this project, now it would only cost $155,000. If it was to move forward past the end of this fiscal year, the component portion, which is for the pellet boiler, would be an additional 25% more expensive. The reason you might elect not to fund that project relates to the present day cost of oil. If you look at the analysis that Margaret Dillon provided in her report, there is an assumption that the starting cost in this year for fuel oil would be $2.83, and it goes up each year from there. As you know, John O'Connor was speaking to it a little earlier, the present day contracted price for oil is $1.57. That substantially adjusts the calculation downward, and so the overall dollars which would be saved by this project, given the present starting cost of fuel oil, make it far less attractive. If the board is desiring of securing the Wyndham Wood Heat support and is desiring of moving forward with energy efficiency programs, would certainly be delighted to move forward with this. However, there are some alternative uses for the funds that the board may also wish to consider.
Wait.
Okay.
Do you know what's the cost of the pellet boiler?
The component piece?
Well, I mean, you said that we saved 25% of the cost of that. So
Yep.
Is that an $80,000 item or a $20,000 item?
It's already reflected in
the savings is already reflected in
Yeah, I was
it.
just
Right, but how
wondering
much
is that?
How much are we saving?
Sure. I don't have that number exactly at hand. I seem to recall it was a substantial portion of the 155, but I don't have the exact number.
About, just give me a.
I
don't
think it
wanna
was in
guess.
the
Okay, so we're
$85,000.
saving about $20,000. Maybe, if you're right.
Yes.
I understand you're guessing, and you're not sure.
I could run to the other room and grab the exact number, but
That's okay.
there is, the cost of the transition to the pellet heat would be 25% more expensive in the following years. So that may be justification to move forward on this project at the present time.
All right, so before Patrick talks with us about the alternate uses of the money, which would be to do work in the other lots, anybody have questions about the energy efficiency measures besides what I just asked?
Actually, I have pretty much the same question. I wonder if you could, I mean, there are a lot of other things that the wood heat project program pays for, like all the engineering and the design, and I'm not sure what all else.
They've already
around.
been
Yeah.
incredibly helpful and helped to reduce the cost of the project that Margaret Dillon was hired to perform for the town. We came in substantially under budget on that project, in part because Wyndham Wood Heat subsidized the effort.
Yeah, but I think it would be useful to know all in what that savings is, because we have to compare that to the fuel savings even at the lower rate in order to figure out how much it's worth. So what I'm suggesting is that if not now, that we maybe table this one for 2 weeks and come back to it when we have that exact number, because it could be 50.
Sounds like Patrick, you find the number. You know where it is in your office?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's finish this discussion, and we'll just ask him to get that. Was there anything else you had?
Nope, that's what I'm.
You talked about a lot of things with the energy efficiency. Why don't we have why didn't you give us a graph where, an à la carte menu where if we chose to do A or B and use more of our fund balance for resurfacing the parking lots, we could still do some energy efficiencies, but not all of them. And here, I don't see anything where we could say, okay, we can do this, we can do that, but, my priority is the lots, and not just the Harmony lot, which I think is in deplorable condition, but a couple of our other lots where we, as you said, and I agree, could be resurfaced here. So, do you have any list for me here?
I'm gonna rephrase that if you don't mind. Can you give us an itemized list tonight, or is that gonna have to wait till next meeting?
Not a problem. I could be back here in 2 minutes or less.
And while he's getting that, I could actually give you the overview answer to the question about why they've been clustered, which is for the energy efficiency pieces, they really work together. So the advice that we've received from the professionals who do energy efficiency work for a living is, it's one thing to pick a site and say, we're going to, if we have 5 sites we're considering, doing 3 of those instead of all 5 because we're juggling priorities is sort of, they would say, they'd like to see us do all 5, but they'd find that to be a more prudent decision. They wouldn't find it to be especially prudent for us to look within a site and do part of it but not all of it, because the stuff works together. So heating in a more efficient manner and then maintaining the heat within the building with, say, the window quilts or the better insulation and that sort of thing is all, it's a symbiotic kind of a package. Has been the way it's been described both by Margaret Dillon and others to Patrick and me. There's people in the room who have better expertise in those matters and might want to speak to that particular question, but that's why we didn't view the package down at the transportation center as being an a la carte menu.
Well, I do know people that put window quilts up and do insulation and don't put a new boiler in, so, I mean, the reality is,
Yeah.
I think there is a potential here for some a la carte choices.
Sure.
So Patrick, can you tell first what's the cost for the boiler?
The total cost for the boiler is $87,869.
That was a good guess.
It's reduced by virtue of the Wyndham Wood Heat program to $66,619.
And when is that incentive good till?
That is keyed to June 30th with an idea of being available just long enough to be able to get through the town meeting process.
And so then the other items, that being the window quilts and the insulation.
Sure, I can run down those if you wouldn't.
$70,000.
So the air sealing is a $2,500 investment. The wood pellet heating is, I said, a $66,000 investment. Replacing the controls is about a $15,000 investment. The window quilts are $23,000, and insulating the masonry walls are $43,000.
So Patrick, are the controls part of the wood heat, the window wood heat subsidy, that 15,000?
It doesn't appear that they are.
They have been in other projects.
Does not.
It does not appear that they are. The note here speaks specifically to that, to the one line item and not to the others. And
Okay.
All right, so then Patrick, if you would tell us then what we can spend the money on alternatively.
Alternatively, as Dick pointed out, the condition of our surface lots is one where there's plenty of opportunity. And the Stevens report has identified a number of places, and staff are recommending potentially two of them. One is the Preston lot, which, as most everybody knows, is the surface parking lot just to the south of the Brattleboro Transportation Center. It too is in pretty rough shape, but from our understanding, it is at a point today where a shim and overlay would be sufficient to bring it back to life, rather than a complete, rebuilding. And that with the available resources, we could also couple that with a project at the Harris lot of a similar nature that would do a shim and overlay, replace the guardrails, and we're thinking, much to the way that was recommended at our meeting last week, if we were to be doing some surface lot work in the Harmony lot, surface lot work in the Preston lot, surface lot work in the Harris lot, and also surface lot work behind the Gibson-Aiken Center, there really is the possibility that we may get fairly favorable pricing. So the recommendation, were the board to choose to focus the additional resources on surface lots, would be at the Preston lot and at the Harris lot.
Questions or comments from people on the board? Dick?
Looking at these, doing these overlays, what is the projection for revisits in terms of these parking lots? Where one of the discussions that we had prior to this was, I had made some comments, and they said the Harris lot the Harmony lot is a pet project for me. Well, they're all my pet projects. The reality is, what you're asking us, what does that give us in longevity before we go back and we really have to do some serious work on these parking lots? Is it 3, 5?
I am not really a pavement expert. I think it's reasonable to expect that we would get probably 6 to 8 years. And
I was going to say 5 to 8.
I think what that would enable us to do is to get beyond the point at which we are repaying the bond for the transportation center, in which case there'll be additional resources in the parking fund, and then some of these more substantial projects could actually be planned for and undertaken. At the moment, we are constrained in our available resources, in part because of the substantial amount of money that leaves the parking fund every year to repay the bond for the transportation center itself.
And one other question is, when I was looking at one of the things that I would certainly like to see, and I didn't see it in the 3-year outlay here, is the pay and display meters. We don't have pay and display meters in the Harmony lot that take credit cards. It is one of the biggest criticisms that we get, and it's not even in 119 where you're addressing the Harmony lot pay and display meters. And I think it's something that if we could find the funding here, if we go along with the upgrades, I think we should replace those, at least one pay and display meter where it takes a credit card.
And not
because-
just Harmony, the other lots too.
No, and I don't disagree,
Yeah.
but you can see those in the outlying years that
Yeah.
there is addressing the pay and display meters, but I think that we have to get to that point. I mean, we're really draconian in terms of our meters and pay and display meters.
So you raise a very timely point, which is that there are certain convenience items that people are coming to expect, and it makes every bit of sense for us to take a look at what are the convenience options that we may be able to afford and may be able to provide to the parking public in Brattleboro. Thankfully, your action just a moment ago with the municipal planning grant, part of the scope of work is to evaluate what types of convenience features should be undertaken and potentially added to the parking system. And so we look forward to working with the planning department and working with eventually with the consultant we hire to take a second look at those things. Dick, I'm sure you'll remember we looked at credit card processing probably about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And what we saw at the time was that the expense to process 25 cents in a parking meter was something on the order of $1.50. So it didn't make sense to invest in that transition at that time. I think it's very possible that the conditions that allow for credit card processing have changed, and I look forward to working with that consultant to be able to evaluate new and additional convenience features and to be able to help to get some of those items as we're able to afford into the future capital plan.
Right, I want to make sure to separate out what we're talking about here. I believe the item that is presented to us now is to make a plan for how we're going to spend about $250,000, maybe a little bit more, in FY17 capital funds for the parking system. And I think that the question about replacing the pay and display meters goes to the FY18 budget. And I think that we previously had said we wanted more information about how we were going to allocate the FY17 capital between energy efficiency and paving, and we'll deal with the pay and display meters later. So unless there's an objection, I want to leave that one to the side for next year's planning when we do the parking budget for FY18 into the spring, and try to focus this discussion on whether we're going to do all paving or paving plus energy efficiency, unless there's an objection to that.
Well, then I will make a motion to alternative 2 to allocate $251,700 for the parking fund capital improvements in FY17 and to amend the approved parking fund capital plan as presented. And I believe that is for the paving of the Harris lot and the
All
Preston.
paving, yep, that's
All
correct.
paving.
All right, and so I don't know that anybody had a chance yet to talk about their preference between these two alternatives, but Dick, so I'm gonna note that I'm in favor of the $271,200 alternative that provides for paving in the Harmony lot and then doing energy efficiency work. And I'll make a motion to amend to increase that item after we have the full discussion. One of the items that we've dealt with recently and that we have yet to come back to for decision-making purposes is how to deal with the Climate Protection Energy Coordinator position. And at this point, I'm not convinced that we should be allocating that funding for that particular position. But I feel very strongly that we should be doing our best on a town level to grab all of the energy efficiency savings that we can in this $20 million plus business that we run here at the town level. And I think that the report that Margaret and Dylan did for us, that was supported by town funding, provides a really solid roadmap for moving forward with how to try to gather in, reap some of those energy efficiencies. And I think that we should be working towards achieving those in the general budget as much as we can, and to the extent that we can incorporate those into the parking-related capital improvements, I think we should do that as well. And unless I'm going to hear that delaying some of the additional paving in the Harris and Preston lots is going to cause those lots to deteriorate so much that we can't do that $50,000 or $75,000 worth of paving next year to extend their lives 5 to 8 years, I think we should spend that money right now on the energy efficiency, start reaping those savings from the energy efficiency measures at the parking garage, and then do the extra paving as part of next year's parking-related capital budget. So I'm in favor of the $271 item because it will bring us back in revenue from energy savings, and we'll have the opportunity to do the paving later on. Dave?
Well, the other reason to do the energy project now, aside from parceling them out over time without having to borrow, hopefully, is the $21,000 that's on the table because of the Wyndham Heat project, which will not be there in the future. And as with other energy projects, it's the only things we talk about that actually pay for themselves over time. And even with the lower, if you cut the in half, which actually the current bill is more, or the current cost bill is more than half of what was projected, it's still 13 or 14, or $130,000 to $140,000 savings, which is the cost, pretty much the cost of the project. So it seems like passing up the savings and passing up the $21,000 makes this much more urgent than the parking lots. And I would love to see the parking lots done as well. We might want to talk about that in some other way, but I think that can wait. There's not going to be much of an additional cost given the nature of the work of resurfacing parking lots, whereas the additional cost of this particular energy project is going to be significant. And when the price of oil goes up, then the savings are even greater because the price of oil has gone up. We're going to have a lot less money to spend on those kinds of things because the price of oil went up. So it seems like this is an opportunity that we won't have again.
Can I say something?
Yes, please. We're waiting for the two of you down the other end.
My head's was going to explode.
I'm waiting
I just say what I want to say. I am totally into energy efficiency, but I am against using this money for the energy efficiency at the parking garage. I spend every single day dealing with residents and visitors who come to our town, and those parking lots need to be fixed. Dick is downtown. I'm downtown. I hear I just think we have to keep our infrastructure up. And it's really, really important for not only the people that live here, but the people that we want to come and visit here. So, and I get the whole energy efficiency savings, but I think we need to use this money for the fixing these parking lots. So that's where I'm going to vote.
You want to tell us how you're going to vote?
I don't normally agree with Kate, but on this one, I think I'm going to have to. And it's just, they're deplorable right now. I'm looking at 3 energy efficiency people out there, so I'm going to get daggers here in a minute. But, I know that there's a lot of ways of saving, with energy efficiency, but I'm just still not sold on wood heat yet. There's just something about it that doesn't sit right. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know. You can't tell me that they're not gonna increase the price of pellets. You can't tell me that they're not gonna, you know, that at some point, and David, you're just shaking your head. I'm
holding it firmly in place.
no, that's quite all right. I mean, I think if you ask, you know, a lot of different people about that subject, there's gonna be a lot of different answers. So, right now, with the shape of the parking lots, I just have to agree with Kate on that one. And they're deplorable at this point.
I move to amend the motion on the floor so that it provides that we will allocate $271,200 for parking fund capital improvements in FY17 to amend the approved parking fund capital plan as presented. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor of that amendment, please say aye. Aye.
What is you're
That's to
amending?
increase it by
That's what
$20,000
you want.
to do the energy
That's what you
efficiency
want.
work.
That's what you want.
Instead of the
So you're
Harris and
basically
the-
saying we're doing recommendation
One.
1A
That's
rather
correct.
than 1B. Well, I'm in favor of that.
All those opposed? All right, so that amendment is defeated 2-3.
And who voted in favor and who?
Me and Dave
Dave
voted in
Okay.
favor. Is there any further discussion about the motion to allocate $251,700 for parking front capital improvements for the 3 lots? All those in favor of allocating $251,700 for paving at Harmony Lot, Preston Lot, and Harris Lot, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I'm opposed. So that carries 3-2. Any further discussion about the FY17 parking fund budget?
You didn't ask for public input
Oh,
on the budget,
oh,
on that vote. Oh,
I think
too
that we
late.
said, is there any other comments from anybody?
Oh, I see. Sorry. I didn't-
Nobody said anything.
They're speechless.
Do you want to come and speak?
Not, well, at this point, it's a moot point, Michael Rogers. It seems like the minds of the members are pretty well made up. I did submit some comments by email today, but 2 of the things, something that Patrick already mentioned, if you're not addressing energy efficiency upgrades this fiscal year 17, as presented, there was nothing in fiscal year 18 or 19 either. Patrick already mentioned that he wasn't asked to do that, so, pointing out the same thing he did. I would disagree with Kate about the use of the parking funds. I mean, if that's true, then none of the parking funds would go to pay for the transportation to the garage itself. I mean, this is upkeep and upgrading of the garage, of the transportation center. And just one other note, that, I think there's a lot of expertise in town between John and Patrick and Peter as far as financing options. I think there's one more on the table now in Vermont. I'm not sure if the town has looked into it yet, but the common, what is it called? The Commons Energy, that actually is set up by the same entity that set up Efficiency Vermont. And it is a low-profit LLC, so there may be options there that we haven't considered yet as a way to finance some of these improvements, and that's what they do. They finance improvements around energy. So just a recommendation to look into that, and we have contact information if you don't. So, but it seems like a little too late to influence the vote.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
Any other comments from anybody who felt that they didn't get a chance before? Anybody think that would have changed their minds? All right, so then the next item, I'll just make this motion. I move that we coordinate the Harmony Lot improvements with the budding property owners, private property owners on the eastern and southern ends of the parking lot to ensure consistent public infrastructure improvements within the project area and to seek property owners' consent for improvements on private land in exchange for hold harmless agreements. Is there any discussion about that one?
I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
I'm not even sure you need a motion to do it, but,
I'd like
No,
your
I
support.
understand. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Dick is opposed or abstaining, which one?
Abstaining.
So Dick abstains. All right, so that carries 401. Any other discussion about parking fund budget? Next item on the agenda is solid waste matters update. Peter's gonna give a overview of solid waste related matters, but I wanna make sure that there's some overview that's being provided to members of the public about all of the decision-making that's gone on over the course of the last months about our involvement with the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District, because I think there's been some confusion about just what was going on. I think the best way to describe what's happened over the course of the last months is that the town of Brattleboro came to question whether doing recycling through the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District was actually in the town's best interests. And through a lengthy period of study, we tried to work with the Solid Waste Management District to change the way they were doing business, but that didn't wind up being cost effective or happening. And ultimately, we decided that it was better for us to go with commercial disposal of our recycling rather than taking our recycling to the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District. For most purposes, our recycling system is going to remain the same. We're going to be putting out recyclables, garbage, and compost in separate streams, and they're going to be picked up separately. The one difference is that our recycling is going to be capable of being collected single stream, so you can put your paper and your plastic and glass together rather than separate. A lot of people will continue to separate their paper and glass and plastic, and that's acceptable as well. Except for that, to the consumer, our solid waste disposal system is going to remain the same. But, like I said earlier in the meeting, we are essentially extricating ourselves from a big portion of what the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District has been doing in the past. We're going to be doing our recycling through a commercial vendor, and hopefully the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District will come to operate in a manner that's more consistent with the town's needs and provide services that are commensurate with what we're paying. And so that's sort of the decision that we made as a board over the course of the last months, and really it's been a matter of discussion for years. So if there's been any confusion about that, that's what it's going to look like.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Just quickly, is that on your recycling, you know, it is going to make it a lot easier. Because now there was a confusion between 3 and 7.
Well, in July, it'll
In
make
July,
it easier.
in July, right, well, when it happens. So it will make it easier for people to recycle. I mean, again, like David said, you don't have to separate it. It can just all go into one barrel. You don't have to be confused about whether it's a 3 through 7. It can all go in one barrel. So it's going to reduce what we put in as garbage, because a lot of people were confused over that. Or they wouldn't do it anyways, and it would just go into the garbage stream. So the overall picture is going to be a lot easier. And I just want to...
Yeah, the questions I've heard from people most consistently are, what's gonna, you mean we can't go out to Ferry Road with our things that won't fit in a garbage bag, or construction waste, or a dead computer or television, or the swap shop's not gonna be there, or what about our paint, or I have textiles, you know, what am I gonna do with them? All of those things are still gonna be available at the waste district. And so all of that convenience is still there. That is a profitable part of the project, or part of the district. So really, for people in Brattleboro, there's very little change.
Right.
Except, you know, the boxes on Fairground Road will disappear, and I think that's probably not going to be many Brattleboro people either. So it really is not a big difference.
And then our business arrangements, while we transition from taking our recycling to Old Ferry Road to taking it to Rutland, is a matter that the town manager is going to talk about our current planning for that purpose.
Thank you. Yes, sir. So,
We're almost finished, Dave, so,
the,
just so you know.
the Wyndham County Solid Waste District has approved its budget for next year. It is the no MRF budget, which is in line with the decision the town has made. So the savings that we have previously projected in the operational costs related to this transition are real. As we talked about earlier tonight, there is some uncertainty embedded in that. There is an outside chance that this transition could end up costing the town a very little bit of money, a few $1,000s. It's much more likely that we're going to save some money, but also, not a material amount on a $16 million budget. Probably something on the order of between $0 and maybe $15,000 of savings. So it's going to be roughly the same costs for the operating expenses. There will be a one-time cost that the town and all the other members of the Solid Waste Management District are going to bear in order to close down the operation of the MRF. So next June 30th, the last recycling will be delivered to the materials recycling facility at the district. Then they'll need to process those final loads. They'll need to bring in all of their containers, all of the large containers like the ones at Fairground Road, in from the various sites around the county. They'll need to process that material, and they'll need to then dispose of those that equipment, or either dispose of it or store it and prepare it for storage. So there's costs in the closure of the recycling operation there that have been estimated to be $94,000. We think that's a reasonable estimate. The town's share of that is about a third, so that's the $31,000 we were talking about earlier in the meeting. That'll be a one-time cost, and we will recover a good bit of that. But we don't know whether we're going to recover it in cash or whether we're going to recover it in savings in the future assessments at the Solid Waste Management District. Those are decisions that have yet to be made by the district board. In the meantime, so we know what's happening with the relationship between the town and the district related to the recyclables. We know that we're going to be sending our recyclables with Triple T, our hauler that has provided these services for a good long time to the town. And through the arrangement that was negotiated a year ago, we're going to seize that opportunity. We're going to have our recyclables taken single stream up to Casella and Rutland. But during the discussion here 2 weeks ago, the compost question arose. We had been expecting, and it still may be the case, that the town's compost is going to be taken to a place called Martin's Farm for processing. It's down towards Greenfield, because that is a more cost-effective way for Triple T to handle our compost if they're not making the trip up to the Solid Waste Management District with our recycling. It would be a separate trip only for transport of the compost if they continue to do that. We are in ongoing communication with Triple T and with the Solid Waste Management District staff over the related costs and whether there's a way to adjust any aspect of the pricing or any aspect of the operations to allow the town to have the compost materials collected curbside in Brattleboro transported to the Solid Waste Management District for the same cost, same total all-in cost, both the trucking and the tipping fee, as what we would be paying to have the material taken down to Martin's Farm. It's not clear yet. We are not optimistic that can be achieved, but we haven't completely given up hope. So in the meantime, we've asked Triple T to extend the December 31st deadline for us to do all the final decision making and all the final paperwork related to this transition into the new year. And so we have an agreement from them that extends that to March 15th. That should be plenty of time for the finalizing of any details related to the potential opportunity to continue taking this to the district, and also to the transition that we need to just be 100% certain of as we approach July 1st, how that transition will occur in the relationship with Triple T and the relationship with the district and the new relationship that we'll be initiating with Casella. So we'll be working through those details in the weeks ahead, and sometime between now and March 15th, we'll bring back to you the package for your final approval. But at this point, it's looking as though it'll probably end up the way that we had originally anticipated. But, you know, we'll see if there's still some opportunity perhaps to take the stuff to the district.
Any questions or comments from anybody on the board about the ongoing development of contractual arrangements relating to disposal of our solid waste? The next and last item on tonight's agenda is committee vacancies. So I'm going to be announcing publicly a series of vacancies on various town committees and encouraging people to apply whenever they feel like doing so, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I'm going to note before we get there that one of our Development Review Board members has, it appears, moved from town, and we've received a request from the Development Review Board to remove Joe Bushy from the DRB because he's relocated out of the community. I served on Development Review Board.
I don't think we should let him go.
I served on Development
should
Review
make him
Board
move
with
back.
Joe Bushy, must be 10 years ago. It's a solid loss. We want to thank him for years and years of service on the board and for being a solid member of the community. But I move to accept the Development Review Board's request to remove Joe Bushy from the DRB because he's relocated out of the community. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. And then, I think this is the way I'm supposed to do it. I'm going to read out loud the various committee vacancies. We have vacancies on the Agricultural Advisory Board, the Arts Committee, the Citizen Police Communications Committee, Conservation Commission, Development Review Board, both a full-time member and an alternate, the Energy Committee, Fence Viewers, Honor Roll, Planning Commission, Senior Solutions Advisory Council, and the SEVCA Board. To the extent that anybody is interested in serving on any of those committees, we encourage you to do so and to submit an application to the town manager's office. Is there any further business to come in front of our meeting? We're ready for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And we opposed or abstaining, that carries 5-0. I want to thank everybody who's been watching us, live or recorded. I want to thank our BCTV operators, ASL interpreters, everybody who's been in attendance, our member of the press. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.